Hello everyone, welcome to our Reading and Writing Skills class. A pleasant day to everyone. For this week, we will continue our discussion about the different properties of a well-written text. So for this week, we will study the next two properties of a well-written text, which are language use and mechanics. Let's start with language use. You need to bear in mind that aside from giving importance to the organization of your ideas and the coherence and cohesion of sentences and paragraphs, you also have to regard the style, tone, and clarity of your writing. So we have to understand about language use. So what do we mean by language use? It is one of the clearest indicators of a well-written text. It enables writers to effectively communicate ideas without confusing the reader. On this note, you need to choose the appropriate language to be used, your purpose or objective in writing, as well as the context in which it was written and the target readers in mind. That's why an effective language has the following characteristics. It must be specific or concrete, concise or short, familiar, correct, and appropriate. It is important that you make good choices when it comes to language use because how you use language affects the tone in the text and the reader's interpretation of it. Before writing, you have to think about and consider your target audience. That's why we have to understand the two kinds of language, which are formal and informal language. So let's tackle this one by one. When we say formal language, it is generally the accepted standard and is widely used in books, magazines, newspapers, research papers, and journals. This is the language that subscribes to the convention in writing in which the tone, choice of words, and the way the words are put in a less personal way. Notice that when you're writing for professional or for academic purpose, there is no use of colloquialism, contractions, or the first-person pronoun point of view. It is used in writing academic, business, and official texts. On the other hand, when we say informal language, it is more casual and spontaneous, which may include slang, local expressions, or even text messaging style of writing. The tone of informal language is more friendly and personal. It is what you usually use when you are talking to a friend, a family member, or someone you consider close to you. Let's take a look at the two example sentences. In the first sentence, the writer used the casual words such as ask, call, and get her permission, which made the sentence informal. The second sentence, on the other hand, used more serious words such as requested, contact, instead of call, and obtain permission instead of get permission. This sentence is formal and is appropriate to use when talking or writing to a person of authority. Always remember that as a writer, you need to determine when it is appropriate to use formal language or when informal language is acceptable. If your readers are the youth, for example, then you should use words that are familiar to young people. When you write, you should also make sure that the language you use is direct and simple, rather than complicated so that the readers would easily understand the text. Also, you should be sensitive enough to use unbiased language so that you will not offend any individual or any particular group of people. When we say unbiased language, it is a language that is free of racial bias, religious bias, and gender bias. Let's take a look at the given examples. Did you notice any biased language? If you can see in the first sentence, the pronoun used is her. But teachers may also be male, so the statement shows gender bias. The second sentence, on the other hand, makes use the gender-neutral pronoun their, making it unbiased. Proper language use allows you to capture the message that you want to convey to your readers. It is all about choosing the right words that accurately capture your ideas. However, writers sometimes encounter problems with the following, just like misused words, words with unwanted connotations, and technical or highfalutin words. Let's discuss this one by one. When we say misused words, these are the words that might be used incorrectly by writers, and this occurs when the word does not mean what he or she thinks it does. So, it is vital to be certain of the definition of a word before using it. This often happens with words that sound or look alike. Let's take a look at this given example. Can you identify the misused word in the following sentence? If you can see in the given example, the writer confused the word amoral with the word immoral. When we say amoral, it means neither moral nor immoral without moral quality, while the word immoral means not moral. Sometimes, it is easy to guess the correct meaning of a word just by looking at how it is spelled. The prefix a signals what something is without, such as in anarchy, meaning to say without a government, or atypical, meaning to say without typical features. On the other hand, the prefix im simply means not, such as in imperfect or not perfect, or impossible, meaning to say not possible. Another common problem is words with unwanted connotations. There are words that make on a meaning specific to a context. Some writers might not be aware of these connotations, so they end up using language that is unintentionally confusing, comical, or even offensive to readers. Depending on how a word has been used over time, it may have a positive or negative connotation. Please read the given example silently. If you can see in the given example, the word salvage means to save, usually from a wreckage of a marine vessel. However, in the Philippines, the Philippine media and police often use the term to mean a violent killing, which is opposite from its traditional English meaning. It comes from the Spanish word salvage that has a meaning similar to savage. Thus, if the writer produced this text for a Filipino audience, the meaning that he or she intended would be lost. Using the word saved or rescued would remedy the issue. The next one is the use of technical or highfalutin words. Some writers may want to sound smart by using words that are very technical or have deep meanings. Though some writing genres require the use of such words, writers should still be careful about using them since they make readers work harder to understand the text. Let's read the given example. If you can see in the given example, the text is complicated because it is filled with words that are difficult to understand, just like the words discourse, anti-disestablishment, assemblage, and administrative political body. If the terms are important to use, then the writer could define what they mean. Otherwise, the sentence could be rewritten simply this way. There is an ongoing discussion between the opposition and the government. This sentence still sounds smart, but it is easier for most people to understand and it does not change the meaning of the original sentence in any way. Aside from the different problems encountered, we have to be aware also of the different levels of language use. It can either be informal or personal, standard or academic, and technical or highfalutin words. When we say informal or personal language, these are words that are considered slang, local expressions, or text messaging, just like the given examples. However, when we say standard or academic language, these are the widely accepted words and phrases found in books, magazines, and newspapers, just like what is stated in the given examples. Lastly, when we say business or technical language, these are the scientific terms, jargons, and special expressions understood by a certain group of people, just like the given example. Aside from all these things, we also have to remember the different principles in language use or diction. The first one is, we have to omit needless words. We have to write briefly but substantially. When your sentence contains words that do not bring any action, remove those words and make sure that every word plays a purpose. The next one is, use definite, specific, and concrete language. When reading, would you prefer to read about something vague and general rather than one that is concrete and specific? Remember that the more specific you discuss and write about the topic, the better your readers will understand it. Next one is, use simple language. Write to express and not to impress. Although this mantra has been repeated over and over again, some writers still insist on using high-sounding or highfalutin words because they feel that they are better writers, but of course not. After all, communicate comes from the word common. That's why the writer must use common words that could be understood by his readers. Therefore, avoid the use of cliches, redundancies, and highfalutin words. The next one is, avoid sexist language. Gender neutrality in most cases of writing or speaking about a person whose gender is unknown, ambiguous, or irrelevant, gender-neutral language may be achieved through the use of gender-inclusive, gender-neutral, or epicene words, meaning to say, having the characteristics of both sexes in place of gender-specific ones. Aside from the different topics tackled in this video, kindly read further on the different examples and some other major issues or problems concerning language use. Now let's move on to the next property of a well-written text, which is mechanics. Mechanics also play an important role as one of the properties of a well-written text. Please read the given example. It is apparent that the given example is quite difficult to read because of the lack of the two important conventions. And what are these? These are punctuation marks and capitalization. In addition, you cannot easily understand the message it sends across its readers. If we put appropriate punctuations, it could be read in this way. Comparing the first two examples, the second paragraph is easier to read and understand. Through applying proper mechanics in writing, you can facilitate better transfer of message in your written text. You will never be lost as long as you keep in mind and follow the basic rules of subject-verb agreement, capitalization, punctuations, paragraphing, and even spelling. Therefore, you have to remember the following conventions to be considered in writing, such as spelling, punctuation marks, and capitalization. When you write, always make sure that you are consistently using one standard with regards to the spelling of your words. Remember that there are slight differences between the American English and the British English. Before writing, think of your target audience. Whether you write using the British or American spelling, it is important to be consistent in spelling. If you are unsure of the spelling of a word, you may consult a dictionary or spell checker. When we talk about capitalization, it is the act of writing the first letter of a word in uppercase while the rest of the letters are in lowercase. You must also remember that there are specific cases when special care must be followed. For example, in number 1, make sure that you capitalize the word of a document and the first word after a period. Next, capitalize proper nouns and adjectives derived from proper nouns. Third, titles are not the same as occupations. Do not capitalize occupations before full names. Fourth, capitalize a formal title when it is used as a direct address. The more formal the title, the more likely it is to be capitalized. Next, capitalize nicknames in all cases. Sixth, Capitalize specific geographical regions. Do not capitalize points of the compass. 7th, in general, do not capitalize the word the before proper nouns. 8. It is not necessary to capitalize city, town, country, etc. if it comes before the proper name. Next, always capitalize the first word in a complete quotation, even mid-sentence. 10th, do not capitalize quoted material that continues a sentence. 11th, capitalize the names of specific course titles but not general academic subjects. Next, capitalize art movements. Lastly, do not capitalize the first item in a list that follows a colon. Let's take a look at the given examples. When we say punctuation marks or punctuation, it is the act of using a system of symbols such as the comma, period, quotation marks, question marks, and others, which are used to give structure to and organize a text. The use of punctuation marks guides the reader regarding how the text should be read. If you can see in the first example, it does not make use of proper punctuation marks, while the second example presents two sentences that are correctly punctuated. In the third example, the sentence denotes that the author's parents are Noel and Corazon. In the fourth example, the use of the serial comma denotes that the book is dedicated to 4 persons: the author's mom, the author's dad, Noel, and Corazon. The simple act of adding a comma completely changed the meaning of a statement. That's all about the different properties of a well-written text. Thank you for watching. See you next week!